right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion of femininity in Latinx culture. I wore my pink jacket to represent all my ladies. Also my favorite color is pink. We're gonna get into gender roles. So I'm gonna just get started with, normally these cafecitos start with, you know, something that's a bit more grounded in like scientific facts, or the moderator, which is me this time, brings out some sort of research or peer review study, which I did look up for this conversation. But at the same time, I think the jumping off point for all of us today is going to be more just observations that I've made about everything that I looked at, and also just from my own experiences, because it definitely seems to be, at least to me, more of an experience as fact, as opposed to like research as fact. And maybe that's just me not being able to separate myself from it. So be it. So feel free to take or leave anything I say. I'm just going to give us a few places to jump off from. So basically what I want to start with is this idea of, or this phenomena of, gender roles in Latinx culture and in Latinx upbringing, particularly when it comes to machismo and marianismo. And machismo, I mean, I think we all are familiar with it. And but it basically is Basically, it's the same thing as male chauvinism. It's this idea of the male as the protector, the economic benefactor and protector, the person in the dichotomy of male and female who has significantly more agency. And then with Marianismo, that's definitely something that I have experienced myself. And I've observed in my own family, this idea of the woman as the Maria, the one who is in charge of being domestic, rearing the children, making decisions for the children, protecting the children, does not really have economic freedom or rights, has significantly less agency than the male. And is primarily meant to be a caregiver and a mother. So basically, in my research, just seeing the impact of how traditional life within and without the home is influenced by these two gender roles. Within US, I mean, I can really only speak to US society. I know that we have women here who do not hail from the US. My parents immigrated from Colombia in the 80s, but that is my jumping off point with it. And how, you know, these gender roles, which are ultimately stereotypes, just significantly affect the dynamic at home and in the relationship. So with that being said, I suppose my first question is, do you believe that this type of gender role exists? If so, how much has it affected you? Do you disagree with this type of placing of male and female? And how ultimately do you see women having the freedom within the Latinx community to make their own choices? I know that might be a bit of a broader question, but just let me know what you think, what that means to you. I think a lot about it economically, but of course there's physical, there's social, there's sexual, so just, yeah, whoever wants to jump in on that. Before we get into all of that, let me introduce our fabulous roundtable of women. We have Susana Montoya Quinchilla. She is an actress, director, and photographer. We have Paulina de la Parra. She is an actor and singer. We have Marta Preve. She is a multidisciplinary artist. We have Melissa Marie Brown, who is a performer and a writer. And we have Jennifer Pernilla, who's a singer, actress, and podcaster. And we have Regina Romero, who is an actress and writer. And with that, I am going to give it to Regina. Awesome. Take it away.
Yay, we love going first. All right. So gender roles, and I have the two experiences as of now. I grew up in Mexico. So my grandmother, she was born in the 1910s. And she was an orphan, and it was very complicated for her. So her way to independence was by marrying my grandfather when she was 18. And my grandfather was so possessive that he always followed her when she went to the market. So my grandmother would be going to the mercado, and my grandfather would spy on her. He never taught her how to drive, so as to prevent her from escaping. My grandmother also always wanted to be a teacher, and due to just her life, she never was able to get an education. So I think I start from that point of view, in which I see that my grandmother, who's my biggest love and who is my biggest example, was always subjected under something. She couldn't be free. She couldn't be herself. She didn't really have control of her life. And the amount of love she created just from that position was amazing. I mean, I think she taught everyone how to cook. She was in charge of educating her children. But I do think that it's admirable that she was able to give her daughters what she couldn't have, which was a big family, a loving family, education. All my aunts were able to have an education and pursue careers outside of just being mothers, even though they're all mothers. And she also raised her grandchildren to be extremely strong. So I think that in my Mexican experience, I feel that it's always the education we receive at home, because it's so unconscious in our culture that my mom, when I was 14, stopped doing my laundry. And she continued doing my brother's laundry, even though he's older. And she would give me more house tasks, because it was my responsibility to clean the table, do the dishes, put the laundry away. And I was always like, why does my brother do not get to do those tasks? Why is he just more able to have freedom in the house? So I think it's all about education. And personally, it's a constant struggle, but I'll let everyone else have a say.
Fantastic. We have Marta, and then Susie, and then Jennifer.
It just really resonated with me what Regina was saying about her grandmother, because my grandmother was also a very important figure for me. And she had this line that I'm not sure I could translate to English, but she had this line that every woman deserve a few years of viudez. Like every woman deserved to be a widow for a few years, she would say. And my grandpa was my grandpa was pretty good. Like she would go to Europe by herself, and my grandpa would stay with 5 kids. But she would have this idea, and I think it's because what you say, Regina, that in the culture is like you as a woman have all of this weight and all of this responsibility. And even though I think that she was somewhat forward thinking for her time, she would say things to me like as if my decisions would have to be taken in order of what would allow me to be a mom, or like what would men would like men don't like if you're too available, men don't like if you call them too much. If you want to be a doctor, well, how would you be a mom? Oh, if you want to be a teacher, that allows you to have children. That's a very noble profession to have children. So it seems like decisions, you know, growing up all had to do with like what's expected of you. And even people that you think that absolutely love you, want the best for you, and perhaps are like independent, would have this mindset. I don't think that is even something that you're aware of, you know, and you're passing it on. My maternal family was not as like serve the male of the family, but my paternal was, and I could see like cousins, male cousins, just like holding plates and saying, "Mom, I don't know how to serve my own food." And like the mom would go and like teenagers don't know how to put cooked food in their plate. And like, and it's almost like oh, but it's like a loving thing, you know, it's like a loving thing from the mom, yet to make you completely useless as a guy, right? So it's just one of those things that sort of like the veintes start falling, you know, when you're like, oh, okay. And then you see yourself in the United States, living your life and making decisions because of like how a guy is gonna like it, or like I like the other day, and I'll end up with this. The other day, my boyfriend was going on and on of his music. He does electronic music, and I do not know a thing. And I'm like trying to listen very hard and like trying to understand him and trying to be supportive, you know. And then I say, I'm so sorry, I don't know more about this. And I immediately catch myself and I say, F that, I'm not apologizing because of who I am. And he had like a moment of like, oh, yeah, no, of course, you know? And he wasn't expecting it. He just goes on and on about electronic music. And I connect as much as I can, but I don't know shit about it. And I found myself apologizing because I was not more accommodating of this. And I hated that. And I like it just, where does it come from, you know, that chip that you can't really take out and it's there and you have to like work on it and realize it and kind of like almost embrace it to be able to to switch it for like your truth, I would say.
So a lot of things have been said that I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that. Oh, I want to talk about that. So I may miss some things, but I do really like the starting the conversation with our ancestors, like our, you know, people before that have gone before, particularly going in the route of our grandmothers. On my father's side, I never met her. She was a teacher, apparently a phenomenal teacher, and raised 7 kids and was still a teacher and didn't have a maid and kept the house in pristine condition and fed all these kids and went and taught a bunch of, like, I don't know how my brain does not compute how someone manages to do all of that. My grandmother on my mother's side, and this is mostly about concerning financial independence, because my grandfather was the breadwinner of the family and he made his own money and he, you know, supported my aunts and my mom. But my grandmother didn't like the fact that she didn't have her own money. So she, on her own, made a little business where she would go to Aruba and purchase gold and then bring it back to Colombia and sell it. And apparently there were lines down the block of people wanting to buy all of this gold from my grandmother. So she had acquired a lot of financial freedom. And my mother tells this story that when that started happening, they noticed, especially when my grandmother went abroad to buy the supplies, the goods, my grandfather was like angry and depressed, and he would just sit like in a corner and just like mope around because he no longer felt the agency that he thought that he was given by being the breadwinner. And that idea has trickled down to my aunts and my mom, into me and my sister. And growing up, I never really saw gender roles play out with my peers, because I have a sister. I don't have any male siblings, and I didn't grow up with my male cousins, so I never like was able to compare side by side. We were both, me and my sister, always held to a high standard of cleanliness and of chores, and from a very young age we were told to start cleaning, cooking, learning how to do these things. And my first job was when I was like 14, and both of my parents encouraged that because they wanted me to have financial freedom. However, there was always underlying, like you said, Marta, very like deeply ingrained chip cultural things that only now can I look back on and analyze and say, was that like, my family's always been very open, whether it's been like about, especially the women, about our bodies and about what happens, but it's always filtered through a male gaze of like, you should make sure that you shave at this age because that is when men start to, notice your legs. Or if you're going to, shave a certain part of your body, make sure it's this way because or else they're going to think you're a slut. Or like every single thing about beauty or about vanity is filtered through the male gaze. And so we're constantly told that you have value when a man wants to be with you. And that was the thing to strive to be. I noticed a lot of my aunts, my mother was very good at playing that game. And that is how she has been able to find her economic freedom and her kind of authority by, playing the game and then realizing that it's bullshit and then going to do her own thing. But a lot of women don't. So then there's this I've noticed a weird kind of self-esteem issue in some fields, and then a independence kind of aired to women in other fields, I think. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Awesome. I believe it is, let me double check. Yeah, Jennifer, Paulina, and then me, and then Regina.
Well, I definitely agree with all of you with all these lessons that we have been taught throughout different generations. I remember that one of the things that my grandma would tell me, and I think it was because it was told on her that, oh, when you have your husband, you have to wake up 30 minutes earlier to get your makeup on and look pretty and have his breakfast ready so he doesn't leave you. And I would just look at her and laugh. And I'm like, she's from a different generation, and trying to say, but why do we have to do that? Why can't he do that for me? Isn't it supposed to be equal? Isn't it supposed to go both ways? And she would stop and say, you know what? That's right. I never thought about it that way. So when you start to talk and have those conversations and realize that those are not normals, that people have been taking it as the normal for years, is just very interesting. And also, I've had this conversation so many times, like growing up, all the things that we normalize in terms of what our role is. I remember growing up, and what is it that girls play with? What is the toys that we are given? We are taught. I had like a miniature kitchen, so I could play how to cook and clean. I had a little doll, so I was her mom. And now these dolls can pee, poop, and you learn how to change a diaper and all this. So you're kind of training yourself during these formative years of your life of what the role is that you're supposed to be taking in society. And if you feel that that doesn't align with you, then somehow you're not perceived as the normal, as the nurturing woman, and or kind, or any of the things that we are being told of what we are supposed to be. So I've been thinking a lot about that, and especially if you look at boys, they are not being told this. They're giving their other role, which is not very helpful for what we try to do in terms of equality. So that is something that I really noticed lately, that even from an early age, we are giving these beliefs. And then until we hit our 20s or later is when we start to challenge them and start to wonder why and how it could be different for newer generations.
I love where this conversation is leading, because I had this all these conversations that I was like, I want to talk about this and this, but this is life and it's unexpected and it's beautiful. I think it's so important to look at our ancestors, because either we like it or not, we are our mother, we are our mother's mother, and way before that, even generations that we don't even know. So I think for me, femininity has been changing and having this evolution during the years of what it means to be a woman. And I think for me, it really clicked when I moved to the US, because being in Mexico, and I love Mexico and my grandma and my grandpa and everyone, kisses on the forehead. But it's so hard to look at yourself and really take decisions for yourself and be autónomo. I forget the word in English. When you are just pushed onto this titles of what women are supposed to do. So whenever I moved to New York, I was suddenly hit with the reality of, okay, I get to make my own decisions. I get to create my own reality. I get to see how I want to live my life. And is this the way I want to live my life? The way my grandma and my mom and everyone has taught me? Or do I want to challenge those preconceptions that I've been fed over the years? And so I've been thinking a lot about femininity as, is it something that is socially constructed, or is something biologically just in our bodies, or it's a mix of both, right? And I still don't have the answers yet. I will let you know whenever I have the answers. But I think it's so important to isolate a moment the masculine figure and just look at yourself and inwards and being like, okay, what would I be? What would my thoughts be if I excluded completely, just for a second? Because we cannot exclude masculine forever, right? It's just part of the world and it's part of who we are. It's masculine and feminine. But just really looking into ourselves and being like, okay, this preconception of what I have as a woman, is it because it was an effect of a man, or like because of a man preconception? Is this what I think of that, or is this innately what I think of myself? And so, wow, there's a lot to unpack, and I am definitely not quite there yet, but I think this generations, we are very, very lucky to be at least free in the way that we choose, the way that we think, the way that we are able to challenge all this knowledge that it's been passed onto us. Just, it's been clinging onto us. We are not deciding for ourselves that that's what we are fed with. So whoever's watching this, I challenge you to keep asking the hard questions. And even, I mean, for example, in Mexico, I was always taught, right? And I am raised by a single mother. So I always thought that I was very feminist, right? And yeah, because it's me and my mom and my sister. And yes, and I appreciate that. Again, kiss on the forehead. But even my mother, that she thinks she's the matriarchal figure for us, she was always like, okay, if you're gonna date this boy, he needs to like go pick you up. And I was always like, why? Like, I can drive, I have my license, right? And so why am I not able to do all these things? And again, as I moved into New York, I was hit with reality all at once. And I was like, there are a lot of things we still have to work on and challenge and question and just go inwards. And so I don't have the answers yet, but I at least think I'm on my way. And I think a lot of us are unfolding these things in front of our eyes that make much more sense to what a woman means.
That's awesome. Everything you just touched on, so many things that hit me so hard. All right, after me, it's going to be Liz, Regina, Marta, and then Susie. I mean, I it's very telling how pretty much every person in here has spoken about their mother or their grandmother, because she, like, I know for myself, and I know for most women, if not all women, it's like your relationship with your mom is arguably just the most important female relationship that you have in your life ever, forever. She's just like up there on that pedestal, for better or worse. And for me, I think something that has been my burden, and also something that empowers me and also burdens me and is a part of who I am, is, I think, this idea of being the Virgin Mary, because I feel like, similar to what Paulina was talking about, and you see it, we all see it, like not just Latina women, like all women know that you are conditioned from when you're a kid to be, very pretty, very accommodating, to be nurturing, in everything, in every aspect of what you're told. I constantly cite the fact that 9 times out of 10, what an adult will say to a child, a little girl, she could be 3, 4, or 5, is, "Hello, you look so pretty." Like, that is the first thing an adult person will say to a girl. It's never, "How are you feeling? What are you thinking about? What do you think about this? What do you want to be when you grow up?" It is, "What a pretty dress." And that is, like, to me, just like the microcosm of how we condition girls. But growing up, I always felt like I was both, I have such a fierce mother. I have such a very maternal woman who is an absolute lioness, in my opinion. Because she came here to a country that was not her home she was 23. She held it down for me and my brother and my sister. She gave up years of her life to hold it down for us. But I think the thing that was always even-handedly taught to me and my sister was that you need to know how to attract a man, and you also need to know how to protect yourself against men. So you need to know how to allure without being vulgar, but you need to know how to rein it in, and you need to know how to defend yourself, because the male that you need will attack you if you are too alluring, whatever that means. But it was this very just, I just feel like there was this, I always got the sense with my mother and with my extended family, my aunts in Colombia, my cousins and everyone, that the way the woman expressed her freedom was through being the Virgin Mary, was through being just prim, proper, knowing how to keep the home, religious, thin, preferably white, and just knew how to manage her kids and manage the household. And so that is something that I feel like it's this paradox of like, oh, this is how they empower themselves, that they think that means they have a choice, is like, if I am just the most that I can be, then I am running a show because I've ticked off all of those boxes. But like the absurd amount of scrutiny that I felt from my parents and the adults, not just my parents, but like any adult in my family, was on another level. The absurd amount of scrutiny on women, and how it did feel like the men, my father or my uncles, had the final say, where a woman would come on TV and someone would be like, "Oh, she's pretty," or "She's this, she's that. What do you think?" "And she's fat." "Oh, okay." And that was so just like, I felt like, and then, growing up and like being told to dress modestly and all of these things, it was just incredible how it really just felt like, ultimately the man gets the final say of like, am I good enough? Am I pretty enough? Am I doing it the right way? Am I dressing the right way? And it was very, very evident that that was directly tied to this very, religion. For my money, my mom's from Cartagena. Church is right in the middle of Cartagena. Like, it's all about the church. And it's just so, like, any display of vulgarity, whatever that, the amount of times I was told, Alexandra, que vulgar, like growing up, it's crazy, because it was like any sense that I felt of my own masculine energy. My God, cutting my hair into a pixie cut was like, no. And anything, any weight gain, that's vulgar. Any profanity, it's vulgar. If you're working as a waitress, you're vulgar. Like, it was just this, guys are not going to like it. And also you are giving them the wrong idea. And I think it was that very, very harsh contrast of being so soft, being so accommodating, knowing how to read every cue in the room, while also being told, no, it's too much. So that's my soapbox. And now my soapbox is over.
So for my experience, I have my dad's family who came over here from Puerto Rico, and then my mom's family moved over here from Czechoslovakia. They met in the New York City Police Department, and that's just a whole other conversation in itself. But as far as like my parents go, I saw a lot of that toxic masculinity culture in my own house. My dad was very overbearing on my mom, and she was very much the person who was like, okay, I'm going to serve him. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm going to do the laundry. I'm going to cook. I'm going to take care of the kids and all this stuff. And then I saw a huge change when she started working. So she got a job working as a teacher for kids with special needs, like severe disabilities and things like that, about 10 years ago. Or 12 years ago now. And when that happened, that was right before my parents divorced, because he was so controlling of her that he didn't want her to work at all. And he started becoming, as we were talking about in the group message, he started becoming violent towards her because of that, because he didn't want her to be, out and about. He didn't want her to be places that he didn't know where she was. And I think a lot of that toxic culture comes from the fact that not only is it ingrained in women to be the the caretaker and provider for the children, but it's so ingrained in men that you have to be the breadwinner. You have to be this person that shows no emotion. And that idea is almost as toxic as the fact that women are put on this, pedestal of they have to be the caretaker, because it takes two to tango in a sense. Like, there has to be change on both ends for there to be some type of progress, because if we don't change that mentality in men, then we can't change that mentality in women, that they have to be the caretaker and provider, because they're so focused on, I need to be what my dad was, just as we're so focused on we need to be what our mom was. And it can create this really toxic culture, and it stems from so many years ago, even like women not even being able to hold a bank account or being able to vote and having to march for those freedoms. That's because of that toxic culture that not only permeates the Latinx community, but all communities that have had to, try to work towards this progress. And it's hard because the generational trauma of like having to be that person, that provider for your family, or that caretaker for your family, is instilled in us from the time we're little. And it's come down from generations and generations. And it's not just us. And I'm glad that, we're able to have this conversation and talk about it, because it shows that there is, progress that's trying to be made. And that's my piece.
All right, so I'm gonna talk about 2 points that with this wonderful conversation. So the first point I want to address is everybody has been talking about our ancestors and our violence. And, one of the things that Liz mentioned was masculinity and toxic masculinity and the violence that derives from that. And as a Mexican woman, sometimes it feels like a death sentence because it feels like you're gonna be always a victim, no matter if it's from your partner, or from your cousin, or from your like a stranger. You're always in danger. And in the last years, there's been this huge feminist movement happening all over Latin America and in Mexico. And I've had to really like just unlearn a lot and really dig deep on just like what has happened to our society. And it just always like, the most vulnerable populations, at least in Mexico, because in the US it works differently. But in Mexico is indigenous women. They're the most vulnerable. They're the most like they're violentadas. I don't know how to say it. And that intersects with colonization and how our approach to whiteness works, because gender roles were reinforced with the colonization, because otherwise indigenous people had another way of thinking. I mean, muxes in Oaxaca are two-spirited beings, and they were cherished by their community. And it's really complicated to pinpoint how these gender stereotypes were created and how they were reinforced, and then how we live them nowadays and how we're fighting to break them down to help those most vulnerable. Because the more I go into my work as an artist, the more I realize is that I want to do activism with it. I want indigenous, Black, queer people to thrive. And I feel that if we don't break down those stereotypes or those roles, then we're going to perpetuate that violence that is attacking our own community. And yeah, I think that that's point number one, because the rise of femicides is extremely worrying. And I think I'm super privileged. I know I have white passing privilege. I have like class privilege, and I don't have to worry that much about being the next victim. But I carry that fear always. It's something that it's not educate your women to be safe. We need to re-educate society so that women are not victims. And point number two was relating to queerness, because I think what really has opened my eyes with femininity, masculinity, has really truly been the queer community, because they're the ones doing a lot of the work of deconstructing gender roles, gender stereotypes. And I think I had that conversation with my mom, because I'm queer, my partner is queer. And when my mom met her, she was like, "Oh, so you're the man of the relationship." And it was basically because I like wear flannels and like look more masculine, but I'm like, this is, I am so feminine. What are you talking about? So it's just, people have a lot of issue understanding queerness and how it works. And I feel that if we just listen to queer folk, we would learn so much about gender roles and deconstruct so much. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make.
Regina, that is what I heard. That is what I heard. That is what I heard. That's great. Okay, so now we have Marta and then Susie. And then I think we're just gonna, y'all, it's already 1:51. We're gonna go around and do final thoughts with everyone. That'll be just everyone jumping in saying one final thought. Okay, so let's pass it over to Marta.
Thank you. There's so much going on that I wanna touch on, because you guys all like say such important points that I like wanna but Regina, what you just said like really resonated, because I used to make those questions. I used to say like, so if one is cold, who's gonna give the jacket to the other one? That was my, like, when I was a teenager, that was a question, because you grow up thinking, oh, the guy's gonna give you his jacket, right? If you're cold. So if there's two guys, who's gonna give who the jacket, right? So it's like it's like I used to make those questions, and like, and then who's buying the engagement ring? And it's like gender roles are so in there, that it's crazy. And what Alex, where you were saying about how we say to girls, you're pretty, your dress is pretty, and then so beauty is cultural, right? And whatever your culture decided that is beautiful, you can't do anything about it if you are not born with those standards, or if your body doesn't shape like those standards, right? So then we teach women that their only value is to be beautiful, because from day one it's a pretty dress, it's a pretty hair, and it's you're pretty. And then so then you're thriving for beauty and all of these products and all of this craziness. And then also beauty is attached to being young. So then when that's taken from you, it's like your value is taken from you, because from day one you were told that you need to be beautiful, and you need to be, you need the seal of a man. And I think Susie, you said that, I think, and it's like, why don't you have a boyfriend? Why I met like one of my role models, my teacher, ran into her in the supermarket, and I was like so excited to see her. I love literature because of you. Oh, did you get married? What did you do? Are you married? And I'm like, no, I moved to New York. I started a theater company, but it was all about like, why are you not married? You don't have children, you're not married. And like my whole like, she fell apart in my eyes, and I realized in myself how like nothing that I do is going to be enough until there's no like seal of a man approves you. Oh, now you have a partner now? Okay, anything you want to go out and do is going to be fine, because now there's someone there, like there's a male saying, yes, this is worth something, I'm with her, so she must be worth something. Every achievement before that is not like family asks, boyfriend? No. Married? No. Why don't you have a boyfriend? Like what are men like in New York? Why it's like no questions about the work, no questions about your personal growth, your feelings. It's all about a guy being there to assert almost. And that is something that I recognize me telling myself. And then I said, like, I think what we were talking about, no, like, I don't know if Paulina mentioned it, like, where is the line between who I want to be and who I'm trying to be because society told me to? Like it's so hard to determine, like, do I like all of these things? Do I want to be all of these things? Or am I trying to be and liking them because I was told this is what I have to do, this is what I have to be? And is just so hard. I feel a lot of anger, and I feel that anger come out in moments. And my poor boyfriend, he's like, I mean, he is a white guy, right? But he's a lot of times he's not expecting any of this, but I immediately go like, I'm not doing these dishes, And he's like, yeah, I wasn't expecting you to do them. But I immediately like, I found myself in the opposite side. I'm so angry that I'm not going to do any of these gender roles, and I'm not going to be all of these things that, and like, kind of like, yeah, no one was expecting you to. And then now I feel it comes like as anger, and I don't know what to do with that. Like, I feel like it comes out of like every little thing is a thing, and I found myself just, as Regina was saying, is like society is so unfair, and the violence in Mexico and all of that, and I just feel hopeless. I just feel hopeless. I just don't know how is that going to change? How are we going to change that? And what do I do with the feeling of the anger of I'm not gonna do and be all those things and dance for you like a monkey, and but sometimes uncalled for, but I just ready for the battle, just and yeah, I don't know the answer. And talking to a friend who's having a baby, she was like saying, I don't want to have a boy because I don't know how to raise a man to not be one of those guys, to not be part of this patriarchal society. I don't know how to change the world, and I don't know how to be a mom to this boy. And I was just like, oh my God, that's a lot. But I think I love the invitation of just find what makes you happy, and don't like ask those questions, and go deep, and what do you take and what do you leave? What doesn't work for you? Like, I leave all of these expectations, but I do like makeup, and I'm gonna keep that, but I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna like want to trap someone or who knows what, like, and I don't like this and that, and I won't keep that. But I do think it's so much work and such a fine line of what is what.
I think what I mostly want to like bring up right now is going back to the really growing up, the really confusing messages, like the mixed messages of you need to be desirable, but also you need to protect yourself. Like, I specifically remember a day where my mom was teaching me and my sister how to dance with a man. And she was saying, you need to put your arm against his chest, and so he can't come in any closer, and you lock it. But then with your other arm, you pull him close whenever you want to. Like, it's all of these like literal techniques on how to protect yourself while also being alluring. And my also, and it's really hard to have these conversations with my family because many times they come from a place of love and they come from a place of positivity. It's just in coming from a place that is in one way or another slightly problematic. So my family, my entire family has been wanting me to get surgeries and things to make myself more desirable in order to find someone that would want me more. It's all coming from a place of love and from wanting the best life for me. So in having these conversations and trying to have like put up a mirror to them and see, like, do you realize what you're saying? It's very complicated because many times they don't. Many times they're like, that's just the way it is. Yeah, it's unfair, but that's just the way it is. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you have to either play the game of society, or you need to, or you dwindle away down the river and everyone forgets about you. So, and that's in one way, I think, what perpetuates the constant violence, particularly against women and trans women, because in trying to combat the in trying to push away from the people hypersexualizing us, it's some sort of I don't know, chauvinistic way of showing power, or whenever we're pushing away from or taking away someone else's power over us, that is when the violence comes out. And now it's happening all over the place. Now it's happening in lawmaking. A lot of activism is coming out, and so the backlash of violence is elevating. I don't have an answer of how to fix it, but understanding how it works is very important. And I also think what Liz brought up is very important. We can't just show a light on the marginalized communities without shining a similar light on the people that are benefiting from it, and how their ingrained ideas are helping them perpetuate the marginalization, the homogenization of so many people. So we have to also ask ourselves, why is it that young boys are taught this? Or why is it that men feel the need to take off their jacket and give it to the woman if she's cold, if he's going to be cold too? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like men have an extra coat of skin where they're not going to feel cold. Like, we need to somehow have this conversation and understand that if you weren't prepared to get yourself a jacket, you're shit out of luck, you know? And that's, I guess, an aggressive way of looking at it. Sometimes you just want to be nice, but yeah, I think it's a complicated subject, and we have to hold everyone to similar standards in order to really get to the root of the problem.
Well, I think it's very interesting with Susie and Martha. We're talking about the constant conflicting messages that we receive and that become a part of us without us really realizing that they are, and they cut our potential and living our lives as our full true selves, because we are being told, don't stand like that because it's going to be blah blah, don't cross your legs like that because blah blah, and you start to filter yourself so much that you don't present yourself in life as your true self, and that is very, very sad and conflicting. So it's a lot of work, but important work to do to unlearn all of that, so we can just live a full life as ourselves without having all these rules and beliefs being imposed on us, and we don't keep passing them along.
Yes, wow. I feel so lucky to have been part of this conversation. I feel so inspired, and I commend every single woman in this conversation for speaking their mind and sharing and being vulnerable. I think for me, I'm realizing that femininity is whatever you want to define it as. It doesn't have to have a title. It doesn't have to mean anything specific to anyone else. It's something we are born with, and that depends on person to person. And I think I have a lot of homework to do from now on to not live in reaction to trying to do the opposite that I've been taught, just to be like, I don't want to be that, but also not being everything that I've been taught, just finding the middle ground and finding my truest self and finding my truest femininity. Because I think just then, whenever I find that, I think we're going to be completely free. And I think that's my way of changing the world and the future generations. So thank you. Thank you all for keep doing the work and keep changing the world in our own ways.
Right on, Paulina. Thank you so much. Liz, and then, yeah.
I just think that it's really important to keep having these conversations, not only with just all women, but including everybody in the conversation, so that we can get people to a place where they're ready to make those changes in themselves, to be better towards everybody, and make sure that women and men and the LGBTQIA plus community all feel safe constantly, and we don't have to put on these masks every day to present ourselves to society, to make ourselves more palpable. And I think that that's the most important thing, to just keep doing the work and keep having these conversations even when they're tough.
Absolutely. Thank you, Liz. Regina.
Yeah, final thoughts. I think that, well, thank you, Quemoción. Thank you, todas, because I think it's so important to keep asking. And I think I take it from a few of you that said, yeah, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answers. I don't think any of us do. I think what's important is to keep questioning and to keep creating and holding space for those of us that, we see you, I think holding space is what's important, and having these conversations and just keeping, like Liz said, including LGBTQ, including outside of the Latina community, including men in the conversation, because their view of femininity must be so different. It's just, these conversations need to happen, and we need to keep doing our work and feeding off of it.
Fantastic. Marta, did you want to jump in with anything?
Yeah, thank you everyone here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Quemoción. And I would say, like, I agree, like, keep having the conversations and communicate with the people in your life, like ask the hard questions and say, it's very hard. It's taken me a lot of time, but I say things like, I feel like you're expecting me to do this and that, or like what you're doing and saying, it's making me feel like that's that. And you might not mean it, but this is how I'm interpreting. Like I've started to put labels on things. So like I express like my Mexican background, it's making me feel like you're expecting all these things from me. And I just want to tell you, just in case. So I feel like communicating and saying like in your personal relationships, just communicating and asking the questions to your parents, to your friends, to your partner, just to be very clear, on the same table, to also free yourself from expectations. Just say them. And you know what? Do whatever the fuck you want. Wear whatever the fuck you want. Life is so short. Like what you like, what you don't, just like forget the expectations, forget that burden. Seriously, like it's so hard, but like work to free yourself and as artists, like let's show it on our art.
Fantastic, you guys. For my own part, my own final thought, I think just what I'm hearing from everyone is to like, I just throwing it back to our ancestors, throwing it back to my parents, even. It's like, I will always be so grateful to them ultimately, because like, they did on some level want me to have a broader perspective. And I do feel like a lot of what we're talking about is when women feel like they don't have a choice, when men feel like they don't have a choice. I'm sure plenty of men feel, or people who are in a sort of, male gender role feel like I have to give her my jacket because that's what's expected of me. And like, is that my choice, or am I just doing it because, and I think that's really key here. Like, I know my mom came from a small town. My dad came from a small town. So it's just that having, for a number of reasons, lack of middle class, the racism, just colonization, things like that. But moving, like, I'm grateful to my parents also because I was able to move to New York. And I remember having the thought when I came to New York being like, oh, wait, everyone dates everyone. It's just like, you see like a really hot guy with what's deemed as an unattractive girl, you see fat with skinny, like everyone gets with everyone over here. Like, I'm like, it doesn't really matter. Like, so that was one kind of like, oh, but I feel like I was only able to have that because I got that broader perspective. And the only way we can facilitate other people, disadvantaged, unprioritized voices, to feel like they have a say is to actually give them a say and give them space to work it out, to say, I don't know, to say, I feel angry and I don't know where to put it. And to know that those things do not negate the other person's experience. Like, Marta, you feeling angry doesn't mean that I hope your boyfriend knows, it doesn't mean that he has failed you in some way. I think our confusion and our not knowing what to do doesn't mean that society has failed us. It just means that there's work to be done. So I think just continuing to have an open mind and hold space and create the space for, because when your world is small, what else are you supposed to do? That's the only perspective you're getting. So I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for coming in. You can unmute your microphones and we're gonna just cheers with our mugs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Salud.
Salud.
Gracias. Perfect. All right. And
Gracias.